This week, after 7 years, finally Star Wars returned to the big screen. The last time we got a theatrical release Star Wars movie was back in 2019 with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. And this past Monday, I actually got a chance to see The Mandalorian and Grogu early. So I grabbed a Star Wars t-shirt, my Grogu popcorn bucket, and watched it. And honestly, walking into a theater for a new Star Wars movie again felt weirdly emotional for me. Because Star Wars has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I still remember being a little kid and seeing Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, for the first time, and I was completely obsessed. The worlds, the music, the lightsabers, the ships, it just grabbed me instantly. And over the years, Star Wars has become more than just something I watched. It became one of the reasons I fell in love with filmmaking in the first place. It genuinely inspired me to work in film myself. And even now, after all these years, and after all the ups and downs this franchise has had, I'm still a huge Star Wars fan. When Star Wars is good, there's honestly nothing else like it. Projects like Andor are some of my favorite things this franchise has ever done. This show reminded me why I love this universe so much in the first place. And that is also why this movie is such a frustrating experience for me. Because I really loved the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. Season 1 felt fresh, it felt smaller, more focused, more inspired by Western and samurai films. It had all this simplicity that worked incredibly well. And Season 2 built on that in a really exciting way while still keeping the emotional core between Din Djarin and Grogu intact. And honestly, that finale with Luke Skywalker taking Grogu away, that felt like an ending. A real ending. I remember sitting there with tears in my eyes. It actually felt emotional and meaningful. And then we got the Book of Boba Fett, which basically turned into Mandalorian Season 2.5 halfway through. It felt rushed, messy, and honestly kind of destroyed the emotional payoff of Season 2 by reuniting Mando and Grogu almost immediately. And then Season 3 of The Mandalorian came out, and for me personally, that's where the quality really dropped off. The storytelling became less focused, the episodes started feeling disconnected, and it felt like the show lost sight of what made it special in the first place. So when I heard that Season 4 of The Mandalorian had basically been turned into a movie, I was skeptical. And now that I've seen the film, I can confidently say, yeah, it absolutely feels like that. This movie genuinely feels like several episodes of The Mandalorian stitched together into one long movie. Like 4 episodes, maybe even 5, considering how short Mandalorian episodes usually are. And the weirdest part about it, you can actually feel where an episode would normally end. There are moments where something exciting happens, the pacing suddenly builds up, it feels like we're heading towards some kind of climax. And then the movie just abruptly moves on to the next thing. Like, alright, next episode. It constantly feels segmented. Instead of watching a cinematic story that was designed from the ground up to work as a movie, it feels like binge watching unreleased Disney Plus episodes. And that's my biggest issue with the film, because this doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie made for theaters. It feels like a TV production that happened to get a theatrical release. And that's kind of depressing to say, because do you guys remember when Star Wars movies felt like events? I still remember counting down the days until Star Wars The Force Awakens came out back in 2015. The hype around that movie was insane. Every trailer drop felt massive, every poster reveal felt exciting. Going to see a new Star Wars movie genuinely felt special. But with this movie, I literally caught myself last week thinking, oh right, there's a new Star Wars movie coming out. That feeling just isn't there anymore. And Lucasfilm clearly knows they want this to feel cinematic because the marketing keeps pushing this whole filmed for IMAX and must see on the big screen angle. And honestly, nothing about this movie screams cinematic experience. And the thing is, everyone already knows this movie will probably be on Disney Plus within like 3 months anyway. So there's this weird identity crisis where this movie wants to feel like a major theatrical event, while simultaneously feeling exactly like the streaming content we've been getting for years. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. I didn't hate this movie. In fact, if I had to describe it in one word, it would probably be fun. And there absolutely are fun moments in this film, but for me, a Star Wars movie should be more than just fun. Especially when the franchise has proven recently it can still tell genuinely incredible stories. The biggest problem is that the movie barely has an emotional core. Because the character arcs for Mando and Grogu already kinda concluded at the end of Season 2, and this film doesn't really know where to take them next. by the end of the movie, these characters honestly haven't changed much at all. There's no major emotional evolution, no huge revelation, no difficult sacrifice, no real sense of progress. It honestly feels like we're just watching Mando and Grogu go on a bunch of side adventures for 2 hours. And that is fun for a while, but when a movie is over 2 hours and it still feels like it didn't really go anywhere, that's a problem. The film constantly feels like it's building towards something bigger, but never fully commits to it. And because of that, the movie ends up feeling weirdly emotionless. Like I said earlier, I cried during the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, but during this movie, I barely felt anything emotional. And I think part of that comes from the fact that Grogu himself has kind of become stuck. It honestly feels like Jon Favreau doesn't fully know what to do with him anymore outside of making him cute. And yes, he is cute, obviously. And thankfully the movie doesn't completely overdo the baby Grogu stuff, but the most interesting thing about Grogu was always his Jedi storyline. That was the fascinating part, his connection to the Force, his training, his future, his potential conflict between the Jedi path and his bond with Mando. And all of that basically got sidelined in the Book of Boba Fett. And weirdly enough, this movie barely does anything with his Jedi side either. There were genuinely moments where I forgot Grogu even had Force abilities because he barely uses them. At one point, I actually started wondering if he lost the Force somehow. The supporting cast also didn't add much. Sigourney Weaver is in the movie for like 3 scenes, and honestly, you can kind of tell she's there for the paycheck. And I genuinely already forgot her character's name. Jeremy Allen White plays Rada the Hutt, which is fine, I guess, but you barely even notice that it's him because of the voice effects. Most of his dialogue is basically just, "My father is Jabba the Hutt. I don't want to become like my father, Jabba the Hutt." By the way, the phrase Jabba the Hutt gets said a lot in this movie. And honestly, I really didn't think we need to go back to the Hutts again for another Star Wars story. Also, why is Martin Scorsese in this movie? I swear, the entire theater collectively went, "Wait, what?" when his name appeared in the opening credits. And honestly, even though his role is tiny, it was actually pretty funny. Probably one of the biggest laughs in the theater. Visually, the movie also struggles with scale. A lot of these planets and environments don't really feel huge and immersive. They kind of feel like sets or CGI backgrounds. And again, it feels like television, and I genuinely don't understand Lucasfilm's logic anymore, because something like Obi-Wan Kenobi felt like a stretched out movie pretending to be a TV show, while this feels like a TV show pretending to be a movie. Like, how did this become a theatrical release? But despite all my criticism, at the end of the day, it's still Star Wars. There's still something magical about sitting in a theater, seeing that Lucasfilm logo appear on screen, hearing the audience react, hearing the music kicking. That feeling still works for me every single time. Speaking of music, the score was honestly one of the highlights of the movie for me. It felt refreshing, different in certain moments. It added a lot of energy that the story itself sometimes lacked. There are also generally some really cool visuals throughout the movie, especially the opening sequence. That opening was awesome. Mando basically feels like a space John Wick hunting down Imperial warlords. And I completely understand why Lucasfilm used those scenes so heavily in the marketing. They even screened the first 10 minutes in places like CinemaCon and even Fortnite, because they know that opening works. The problem is, after those 10 minutes, the movie suddenly pivots almost entirely into a Hutt storyline and kind of abandons the whole tracking Imperial remnants angle. And that stuff was just way more interesting to me. Instead, the movie feels like a side quest that somehow became the main quest. And maybe we'll get more of that Imperial storyline later in what used to be Season 4 of The Mandalorian, which now basically feels like Season 5 after this movie. Who even knows anymore? But I think that confusion kind of represents where Star Wars is at right now in general. It feels uncertain, like Lucasfilm is still trying to figure out what Star Wars should even be moving forward. Streaming shows? Prestige drama, big blockbuster movies, connected universes, standalone stories? Because when you compare this to something like Andor, the difference honestly is kind of painful. Andor felt mature, focused, cinematic, emotional, purposeful. It felt like creators had a very clear vision pushing Star Wars forward. And when you watch The Mandalorian and Grogu, it feels like the franchise is playing it as safe as humanly possible. Again, I had a good time watching it. I really did. I smiled, I laughed. There are cool action scenes. There are fun moments with Mando and Grogu. The audience around me seemed to enjoy it. But from a Star Wars movie, I expect more than just, that was fun. I want to walk out of a theater feeling something. I want to feel inspired, excited, emotional, blown away. And unfortunately, this movie never fully reaches that level. Still, Star Wars will always have a special place in my heart. No matter how frustrated I get with this franchise, there's still a part of me that wants it to succeed, that wants to fall in love with it all over again. And maybe that's why movies like this disappoint me more than they would if I didn't care. Because I know how incredible Star Wars can be, and when you know the potential this franchise has, something like this just ends up feeling like a bit of a bummer. But hey, maybe this is just a transitional period for Star Wars. Maybe Lucasfilm is still figuring out what the future of Star Wars on the big screen should look like after all these years away from theaters. And honestly, I'm still excited to see where it goes next, because no matter what happens, the moment those lights dim and I see a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I'm always gonna be there.